Hi and welcome to this ForNav coffee break. My name is René Brummel. I'm a product specialist at ForNav and I will be your presenter today. As this coffee break is live, you can ask your questions via the GoToWebinar question window. We will answer them at the end of the coffee break. Today we're going to explain how to set up ForNav source control for GitHub. Source control can be described as a time machine for your ForNav setup. It keeps track of every version of your work so mistakes are not permanent. It makes teamwork easy. Everyone can work on the same project without overwriting each other. All changes are tracked by the source control system so you can see who did what, when and why. Source control helps to deploy changes from test to production. It gives you full control over what to deploy and when to do it. To demonstrate source control for GitHub, I'm going to use these steps. The prerequisites, what do we need to get going. In step 2, I will set up source control. In step 3, I will work with changes local and remote. In step 4, I will deploy my changes to production. Let's start with the first step. Today I will be working in a Business Central on-premise server with the Business Central 2025 Wave 2 release. I have installed the ForNav customizable report pack and I've executed a step-by-step wizard from the assisted setup to get started. I have a repository on GitHub and I've set up a GitHub app so I can connect from Business Central. And of course everything I do today will also work on a cloud environment. The first thing we need to do is set up a GitHub app so Business Central users can connect to GitHub. Setting up a GitHub app is very well documented. The only step that requires specific setup is the API permissions. The API user needs permissions to read metadata and read and write access to code, commits and pull requests on GitHub. The next step is to set up ForNav so it can connect to GitHub. So let's go to Business Central and go to ForNav to the source control tab. You can see we don't have anything in our source control at the moment, and that's because it's not set up yet, so let's do that. First thing I did is I have disconnected the report selection from the backup types. No real reason other than it takes up a lot of space and some time to synchronize everything, and I would like to just synchronize the things that I'm working on today. So I switch that off. You can switch on or off any type of ForNav setup to be included or excluded from the backup. We'll change the provider to GitHub, and then I need to add a client ID. The client ID is obviously the client ID that you get from your GitHub app, and from there you also get a client secret, so I'll add that as well. Then we need to add the organization. I've set up a repository in my Red and Bundle organization. It's called cost4nav.testbackup. You can see at the moment all we have in there is a simple test app. It's an AL app and nothing else. The organization is the organization part of your GitHub URL, Red and Bundle, so I'll just copy that. Once everything is set up, I can drill down into the repository, and that gives me all of the repositories that both my user account and the GitHub app have access to. I'll choose the ForNav test backup that we just saw. Then I can add a base folder. Since this app also has an AL application and may have other bits inside the repository, I will store all of my changes into the coffee break base folder, and I'll set allow push to true so I can push stuff from Business Central into the remote. When all of that is done, you can see that I have changes in my database. This is the initial load. There wasn't anything in source control, so everything is a change, is an initial change. I will stage all of this stuff. I will call this the initial commit, and I can commit. Then I want to push my changes into the remote. Push is grayed out at the moment because I haven't chosen a branch. I will choose the branch test, and then I can push my changes into the remote. It takes a little while, but once that has been changed, I can open my remote. So go to GitHub, select my test branch. You can see that my coffee break folder has been created with the change initial commit. And in there, first of all, I have the .fornav folder, which contains the fornav init.json, which tells me which provider created this backup, this source control, the version and the companies which are connected into this source control repository. Company names are important because, as you can see, if we go back to the coffee break folder, all of these all of the source control folders are company specific, so I can only load, for instance, these email templates into a company that's called Kronos International Limited. You can see that the names of the companies are encoded, and that's so we can make all of the company names work even if they have dots or slashes and everything. Now, setup source control, we can see what happens when we add and modify setup in Business Central and on the remote. So let's start with some changes on the remote. In my coffee break folder, I have some setup UTF-8 stuff, which has, for instance, the legal conditions. And let's say I want to change my legal conditions on the remote or in a test database or development database or whatever. I can change this stuff, just remove all of the excess exclamation marks, commit my changes. And I can also say, maybe I want to make a mistake. So we can work with mistakes. I can change please pay into GitHub, which obviously we don't want on our actual invoices. Once I've made these changes, I can go back to Business Central and pull the changes from my remote. Now ForNav will load the changes from the remote, and you can see I have 2 changes, which is correct because I made those changes. If I hit compare, you can see or else has the removed exclamation marks. That's fine, I'll stage that change. The second one, the payment note. Please pay has been changed to GitHub. I don't want GitHub on my invoices, so I'm going to discard this one. Discarding the change will result in a conflict because now I have a changed version on my local in Business Central and I have a changed version on my remote GitHub. So I need to choose which one to use. I will use the local version. And then of course I want to commit my legal conditions. I'll commit those. Now what has this changed? That means that in the ForNav setup, my legal conditions has been changed to or else. Payment note has not been changed because obviously we rejected those. If we go back into our remote and look at the payment note, you can see this has been changed back to please pay. And that's exactly where I wanted to go. The next step, of course, is to make some changes on the local system. So let's make some changes to a report layout. You can see that this report layout, currently my sales order has a green address field. Let's say I want to change that back to yellow. Save and close. And then I have an email template, and in this email template I will change the description to a mistake. That means that if I go back to the ForNav source control, I have 2 changes. These are local changes. I have a change in my layout. If I hit compare, you can see that the origin, you scroll down a bit, is lime and the change is yellow. That's perfect, exactly what I wanted. So stage that one. The other one, description has been changed to a mistake. This is obviously a mistake. So I will discard that one. I will commit this change, update order layout, and commit it. Then I want to push it into GitHub. Then it says my GitHub has changes on the remote branch, and that's because I just discarded the changes in the payment note. So I need to pull the changes from the remote first, just to make sure that there are no changes on the remote. And then I will push. It just prevents conflicts. That means if I go back to my email templates, you can see that my mistake has been changed back to SLS invoice the way it was. And on my remote, if I go back to my coffee break, you can see that I have a new commit on the update order layout. If I look at the details, you can see that the background color has been changed from lime to yellow. One thing about these 4nav.json layout files, the actual layout is in the base64 layout. So this is the actual change that's going to be loaded when I load this into the Business Central database. So you cannot change any of this JSON stuff directly in the JSON file because we don't change them. We only change the updated layout information in the base64 layout. Finally, we can deploy our setup to production. We need to create a pull request to merge our changes to the main branch, and then we can set up and pull from source control on our main production database. So let's go back into our repository. Let's create a pull request to pull the changes from test to production. You can see I have this pull request with all of the changes that I have created. So you can see the initial commit, the update 4nav init, update order layout and everything. I will merge this pull request. And that means if I go back to the code, in the main branch now I have my coffee break folder. That means I can go to my production database. It's also a simple Docker container that I've called bcprod, but it allows me to demonstrate changes from test to production. I'll log in and go to 4nav source control. Nothing here, obviously, I still need to set up. I have discarded the report selection. I will go to source provider GitHub and of course add my client ID, add my client secret, add my organization. I'll choose my repository and base folder. And in this case I'm going to leave allow push set to false because this is a production database. I'm never going to make any changes to the 4nav setup in here. I'm just going to load the changes that I make in my test or development databases. So all of that is done. That means that as soon as my GitHub setup is done, I can select my branch, in this case main branch, hit close, and 4nav will do a pull from my remote system. So it's going to load everything from GitHub. I can stage all changes, call it initial load and hit commit. And that means if I go to my 4nav email templates, my email template is here. Go to my 4nav standard reports, my custom layout is here. And if I run it, you will see that eventually I get the layout with the yellow address field. Let's recap what we just did. We have set up a connection to the GitHub source control system. To connect to GitHub, we had to create a GitHub app with the correct permissions. Once we had that, we could connect with the client ID and secret. Once we were connected, we could push our existing setup into the remote. We could add changes to the remote and to the local system and use push and pull to synchronize. We could also discard local or remote changes. And finally, we connected our production database and pulled all the settings we stored on the remote. Thank you for listening to me so far. I can see we don't have any questions, so I will wrap up this coffee break. If you want to know more about 4nav or if you want to download the 4nav toolbox, please visit our website. If you want to install 4nav in Business Central Cloud, please visit the Microsoft App Source. You can watch more videos about 4nav on our YouTube channel, and if you have any questions about 4nav, please email them to support@4nav.com. For a full list of upcoming and recorded coffee breaks, please visit 4nav.com/coffeebreak. With that, thank you very much for listening to me today, and goodbye.